the gentleman from California, Mr. McClintock, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Russia's diplomatic intervention in the Syrian crisis is indeed welcome news. But whether it is real or illusory, the President needs to step back from the dangerous precipice that he has brought us to. Certainly he's made his case for war with Syria very clearly, that the United States must punish the use of chemical weapons, and if we don't, they're more likely to be used again. He assures us that the strike will be limited and that it will aid moderates fighting the regime. He warns that American credibility is at stake. The case is quite clear. It is simply not convincing. It's possible that an attack on Syria will convince Assad not to use chemical weapons in the future, but it is just as likely to convince him that being in for a penny, he might as well be in for a pound and to unleash his entire chemical arsenal. It is just as likely that an American strike on Syria will produce a retaliatory strike, possibly by Hezbollah against Israel, requiring a retaliatory strike by Israel, possibly on Iran, in a catastrophic chain reaction. We don't know where it will lead, but we can be sure that the morning after the attack, we would confront a most uncomfortable irony. In retaliation for Assad killing Syrian civilians with chemical weapons, the United States will have killed Syrian civilians with conventional weapons, for civilian casualties are an unavoidable tragedy of war. Well, who would be our new allies in this war? Now, they'd be the Islamic forces that are responsible for their own litany of atrocities, including the massacre of Syrian Christians, the beheading of political opponents, summary executions of war prisoners, and acts of barbarity too depraved to be discussed in this forum. We would be aiding and abetting those forces. We're told that al-Qaeda is not more than a fourth of our new coalition and that the rest are moderates. Well, we were told the same thing about Libya. We were told the same thing about the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. The problem with moderates in the Middle East is that there aren't very many of them, and they're quickly overwhelmed in any coalition they attempt. Nor can such an attack be limited in duration or scope. The fact is, once you have attacked another country, you are at war with that country and its allies, whatever you wish to call it and whatever you later decide to do. And wars have a very nasty way of taking turns that no one can predict or control. World War I began with a series of obscure incidents that quickly escalated into World War. And the Middle East today is a veritable powder keg compared to the antebellum Europe of a century ago. Finally, we're told American credibility is on the line. Well, chemical weapons are barbaric, but this isn't the first time they've been used in modern times. They were used previously in Syria, in the Yemeni civil war, by Iraq against Iran, by the Vietnamese against the Cambodians, by Libya against Chad. The only unique thing about this incident is that it is the first time an American president has declared their use to be a red line. Our credibility was harmed by foolish and reckless statement by the President. Let us not further damage it with a foolish and reckless act by Congress. Wars are not something to be taken lightly. From the podium right behind me, General MacArthur warned that in war there is no substitute for victory. If you're going to start a war, you'd better be prepared to put the entire resources of the country behind it, to endure every setback along the way, to utterly annihilate every vestige of the enemy, and to install by force a government of our design and choosing, and to maintain that government until all opposition is ceased. If you are not willing to do that, then you have no business firing the first shot. More than a decade of irresolute and aimless wars in Iraq and Afghanistan should have taught us this lesson, that victory and not stalemate must be the objective of any war. Yet this would be a war whose avowed objective is stalemate. That is self-defeating. It is immoral. The President has already made his case very clearly, and he is very clearly wrong. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman.